The Asian diet, Indian foods, Chinese foods, it largely consists of starch. You've got the rice, they've got the noodles, you've got bread, like naan, chapati. So these are all very starchy, and these are the foods that increase one's risk of obesity, insulin resistance, obesity, and type 2 diabetes. Whereas with the Western diet, you will see a lot of refined food like chips, cereals, soft drinks. Now, when it comes to attitude, you see, a lot of people have that. Why attitude differs is because Asians have grown up eating these food. And now when you tell them, hey, wait a minute, these are the foods that are making you unwell, they'll say, you sure? I've been eating this, my parents ate this, my grandparents ate this, my grandfather doesn't have diabetes. You're saying that same food he ate is giving me diabetes today? Yes, because there are many factors involved. Hi Lynn, hi Michael. Thanks for having me.
Hi, you're welcome. So I'd like to welcome you onto the Peaks Life, Dr. Sanjeev Balakrishnan. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Lynn.
So really excited to hear all the wealth of knowledge that you've got. But before we dive in and get all excited about keto and low carb and all the advice that you've got, I'd like to find out a bit about you first. So Sanjeev, do you just want to tell us a little bit about yourself personally and professionally?
Okay. So my name is Sanjeev. Everyone calls me Sanjeev. I've been a doctor for about almost 20 years now. And I did my training in Singapore, and then I migrated to Australia because I love this place. And I continue my training here, and I've been working as a GP in Australia now for about 6 years. And I'm married, and I have two kids, 17 and 13 years old. Yeah, okay. And it's important I stress their age because they are also doing the low-carb keto diet. So yeah, and that's one question I always get from the patients, hey, are your kids doing it as well? And I say, yeah, of course, okay. But, we are just a bit not too strict with them because they're kids, but as long as they don't do it, as long as they don't eat too much carbs, I'm fine with that. So anyway, I discovered this low-carb diet about 10 years ago, 2000, about 10 years ago when I was training in Singapore. What happened was I had to sit in with a specialist every week to see how she was managing patients who had type 2 diabetes. And she's an endocrinologist. Mm-hmm. So I sat in with her for about 4 to 6 months, if I can recall. Yeah. So and after a while, I saw a pattern. And it really made me upset because I thought, in years to come, I'm going to be one of those patients seeing a specialist to treat my diabetes. Okay, but by the way, I don't have diabetes. But I think that's my greatest fear. If I wake up one day and I find out I have type 2 diabetes. But so I saw a pattern. I saw patients coming in every few weeks, and they would get their insulin units increased. Right. Hi, Mr. So-and-so. Oh, your latest blood sugar levels show they've risen. We've got to increase your insulin units by 6, by 8, or whatever. And go and see the dietitian and listen to what she says and come back after 3 months. So when they came back, and it'll be the same conversation, almost similar. Oh, your sugar levels are still high. They've gone higher. In fact, they've gone higher. And we have to step up or increase your insulin levels again. So it took me a while. And when I saw this pattern, I got scared. As I said, I got scared, right? So I thought, hey, wait a minute, there must be a better way. So, and I have no idea how I found out or how I discovered Diet Doctor. Now, that's the website that blew me away. So while I was doing my research, going on the internet, looking for answers, looking for a better way, I happened to stumble on dietdoctor.com. So what I did was I'll be honest, I was skeptical, but the more I read, the more I realized that it was making sense. It was making sense, and this is something we all know. And that's why I was very upset with myself. Wait a minute, I know all this, but why does this sound new to me? Okay, because I learned this in med school.
Mm-hmm.
But so I was quite upset with myself, and I realized the answer has always been in front of me. All right. So if you want to stay healthy, you've got to avoid having processed food, refined carbohydrates, and all that excess sugar. Even then, I was still skeptical because the advice was you've got to increase your intake of fat.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this was something very new to me because everybody I knew used to say, "Now, fat is bad for you. Don't eat that avocado. You put on weight."
Right.
Avocado.
Right.
Can you imagine? Someone said to me, "Don't eat avocado. It'll make you gain weight." I was like, "Okay, so stop eating avocados." And so I was eating oats. I was eating brown rice. I was eating whole wheat pasta because this is what they said. It's good for you, right? But I wasn't overweight, but I had a belly. And as my cousin, who's a doctor, said to me one day that she noticed that I was having man boobs, right? Yeah. But I wasn't overweight, but I had fat around me.
Right.
So what I did was I started doing this on my own, just following the works of Dr. Andreas Eenfeldt,
Mm-hmm.
and I realized, hey, this is really working, right? Fat just melted off my waist. I had to buy new pants. I had to make new holes on my belt, and I eventually had to buy a new belt. And so it really works. It really works, and I was still doing this on myself. I was not telling anyone else to do it. My wife, who is also a doctor, back then she was quite concerned the way I was eating. But she said, "Hey, wait a minute, you are losing weight, right? You're becoming slimmer, thinner, fitter, leaner." And well, she came on board only 2 years later because she was still very skeptical. But hey, eat fat to burn fat.
Yes.
So yeah. So ever since then, I've been advocating to people who would listen. But I did not say this to any of my patients because I didn't know how they would react. And when I came to Australia about 6 years ago, and then I heard the amount of trouble Dr. Gary Fetke got into for giving dietary advice to his patient when he is not a trained or qualified dietitian.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, whoa, okay, so as doctors, we can't give this advice. But I was giving it to one or two people who come to me asking, hey, is there another way?
Mm-hmm.
Finally, I met Dr. Fetke. Dr. Fetke and I are good friends now. And he said, Sanjeev, you know the truth. Just let your patients know about it too. So, and this was about three and a half years ago. So for the last 3.5 years, I've been advocating this diet to my patients, and it's an option for them if they want, right? And it's an option they like. And so people love it, people who want to lose weight, people who want to control their type 2 diabetes, they want to reverse their insulin resistance, fatty liver disease, or they just want to stay fit, want to stay healthy, and want to just prevent chronic diseases. They do it. And so it's like what I told Dr. Andreas Eenfeldt one day, that I cannot tell people otherwise with a clear conscience.
So Sanjeev, I love the fact that you started this, and you started it for yourself. You saw the results. Your wife came on board, but the fact that as a medical professional, you couldn't go out and just shout from the rooftops. You couldn't tell everybody. I mean, that's a real indictment on our system. But we'll maybe get into that later. I'd really like to hear a bit, first of all, about if we look at the statistics, we look at the Singapore population, we look at the Australian population. What are the statistics telling us right now in terms of rate of metabolic syndrome, diabetes, obesity? Where's that at right now?
Okay, so I don't remember the numbers of right now, but the fact remains that the number of people who are obese or overweight, which is leading to chronic diseases, is rising year every year, and you can look at the reports. I mean, I don't have it with me right now, but you can look it up, okay? And you will see that the number of diabetics and people who are overweight is rising every year. It's similar in Southeast Asia, where Singapore, Malaysia located, and even Australia. I don't have the exact numbers, but even in WA, Western Australia, the numbers are rising. The numbers are rising. And it's getting nowhere. We're not getting anywhere with the same advice that we've been dishing out for the last 30, 35 years, 40 years, in fact, all right? So the problem with countries like Singapore and Malaysia, I was born in Malaysia, so is that they very much rely on advice from first world countries, Australia, America, and you will realize the diet in America and Australia, UK for that matter, are quite similar, and and there's a large population, as people become more affluent, they tend to move towards consuming Western type of food.
Right.
And that's why, so it's similar.
So Sanjeev, are you, from your experience, 20 years is a long time as a GP, are you seeing a difference in the attitude and a difference in the way that people, the patients that you see and they present with symptoms, are they more welcoming of advice around diet now? Or are they still quite resistant when you speak to them about low carb eating or the keto lifestyle?
Okay, so that part is a little tricky. See, a lot of people I know, because I've worked with a lot of Asian patients. When I say Asians, I mean Chinese, Indians, and now I work with a lot of Caucasian patients here in Australia. So there's a slight difference in the attitude of these two groups. You see, that the Asian diet, Indian foods, Chinese foods, it largely consists of starch. You've got their rice, they've got their noodles, you've got bread, like naan, chapatis. So these are all very starchy, and these are the foods that increase one's risk of obesity, insulin resistance, obesity, and type 2 diabetes. Whereas with the Western diet, you will see a lot of refined food like chips, cereals, soft drinks. Now, when it comes to attitude, you see, a lot of people have that. Why attitude differs is because Asians have grown up eating these food. And now when you tell them, hey, wait a minute, these are the foods that are making you unwell, they'll say, you sure? I've been eating this. My parents ate this. My grandparents ate this. My grandfather doesn't have diabetes. You're saying that same food he ate is giving me diabetes today? Yes, because there are many factors involved. We're talking about different times. Now we have food readily available. We eat food more than we need. We eat them more frequent than we should. And so the attitudes, so my advice is always tailor-made to the person in front of me.
Yeah.
And are you developing a reputation as a low carb specialist, that people are coming to you specifically because of your welcoming of a low carb lifestyle and your expertise in this area?
Yes, I mean, I wouldn't call myself a specialist because I've still got a lot to do, a lot to learn. But people are coming to me because they have seen results in their friends who were seeing me. So I said, hey, how did you do this? So, it's by word of mouth. They will say, go look for Sanjeev and he'll help you. So, yes, I can see my patient base, slowly increasing for people coming to learn what can they do to prevent diseases or reverse the conditions they have.
Yes.
And if you look at your patients, Sanjeev, and you look at some of the results, obviously you can't mention names, but can you tell us about some of the results that you've had, some of the more radical, reversals, maybe cases with diabetes? But I think everybody wants to hear that this really is possible. It is possible to reverse diabetes. It is possible to lose weight. So what have you found?
Okay, so I've had, I've got many success stories. So there was this guy who, when I moved into a new practice, I met this gentleman. He's in his early 60s, and he was on, believe it or not, 80 units of insulin.
Wow.
80.
And
Right?
for anybody listening, what's kind of a more normal level? Because that's a pretty extreme amount of insulin, right?
Yes. So let me put it this way. When someone needs insulin because they have type 2 diabetes, not type 1, type 2, so the doctors will usually start you on a low dose, maybe like 6 units a day, 8 units a day. And, it keeps rising if we are not able to control your blood sugar levels.
Right.
So, and what's peculiar about this gentleman is he carries his big book with him. And you can see when he started using insulin, the dates are there, and how it was gradually increased or titrated all the way to 80 units.
Wow.
Okay, 80 units. So, and he was running out of his insulin every 3 days. And so he would have to get a new prescription. And so when I met him, I asked him, hey, what do you want from your diabetes? So he was taken aback. He said, what do you mean? I said, what do you want from your diabetes? He said, no one's asked me this question before. I said, you are taking 80 units of insulin every day and your sugar levels are still all over the place. What do you want? He said, I want to come off my needles. I can't afford it. I have to buy, I have to buy the insulin every 3 days, 3-4 days. So I said, okay, would you be willing to change your diet if it took you off your insulin? He said, yes, but very skeptical. So he came to see me every 3-4 days, and we lowered his insulin because he was very skeptical. So we lowered his units every time by 4 to 6 units. And he's very good. He will measure his blood sugar levels daily. He will plot it and show me. So we kept reducing his sugar levels by 4 units, by 6 units. And after 6 or 7 months, he was on 0 insulin. He had lost so much of weight. He had to buy he's not a very well-to-do person. So he's still wearing the same belt, but he has many holes on it now. Yeah. And he was, when we achieved this, he was very angry. In fact, he said, why didn't someone tell me this 14 years ago?
Yes.
Yeah.
If all I had to do was change my diet, I would have done it. Right?
Yeah.
So the most important thing here, I think people should understand or realize that there are many ways to treat type 2 diabetes, and just because someone has been diagnosed with that condition, it doesn't mean they need to be on medications.
Right.
Yes, so that's one success story, and he keeps coming back. He's seeing me, and now we are helping him with other conditions, but he's no longer on insulin, and his sugar levels are well controlled.
I mean, that's fantastic, right? And he must feel so much better.
Yes. So it's very gratifying, to see to see you help someone like that, and he's happy. He's so happy. And now he's trying to get his sister to change, but his sister is refusing to follow his path. But that's a different story. And there was another story. This one was a 15, 16-year-old boy. His mom, they are New Zealanders. So his mom came to me one day, and because he had this infection in his armpit. And so we treated with some antibiotics, and I remember this child because I did this boy because I treated him about like several months before he came back to see me again, and in between he had seen other doctors as well, and he was having this infection in his armpit that would not go away, and he's a big boy, overweight. And so when he came back to see me again, I told his mom, would you be willing to change his diet? Mom said, why? So I showed her, this boy was already having some signs of insulin resistance. The skin at the back of his neck was dark. His the skin at his armpits were dark, and he was having skin tags. And these are all skin changes that we see in someone with insulin resistance. And I said, so, I told mom, look, if we change his diet, we might be able to get rid of all this. And he won't need antibiotics, this infection will go away. So the mom said, okay. They came back to see me with a food diary. And I said, look, these are all the foods we will have to either eliminate, decrease significantly, and replace it with other good food. And they never came back. They never came back to see me until about four months later. Right? And mom was very happy because the boy had lost weight, he was looking fitter, slimmer, leaner. The skin changes had, reversed. The infections were no longer there. At one point, they were contemplating surgery to just clear out the infection, so he didn't have to have his surgery done. And so mom was very happy with the results by just changing his diet.
And Sanjeev, for anybody who's listening or watching, give us a quick summary of the changes that you made to his diet. What were the things that you took out, and what were the things that you put in?
So it's quite simple, really. It's all about what teenagers eat. You see, there was once when I went to my daughter's school for some reason, and I opened the dustbin to throw rubbish. And I saw the dustbin filled with wrappers of junk food.
Right.
Junk food, just chips, flavored milk, soft drinks, all in the dustbin, right? All in the dustbin. And my daughter was there, so she told me, no, don't make noise, don't speak to the teachers, don't do anything, don't embarrass me. I said, okay, fine, right? So this is exactly what this boy was having. So when I looked at his food diary, he was having cereals for breakfast, he was having flavored milk, soft drinks, and he was having fast food like 3 times a week more. So and a lot of potato and fruits. Some people think, oh, fruits are good. Fruits are good. Yes, fruits are good, but in the right quantity. So so all I did was help his mom make better choices. So like instead of having bananas for snacks, maybe he could try some strawberries, which are low in sugar. Instead of having cereals for breakfast every morning, maybe have cereals like once a week. And then, other days have some eggs, have some avocados, some tuna. Help him, give him some ideas for breakfast. Lunch, reduce the intake of potato, rice, and buns, breads. All that was in his food diary. So with teenagers, it's not easy for you to change their diet immediately. So what I told his mom was to do it 1 meal at a time, right? So maybe start off with breakfast. Make sure his breakfast every morning is low in sugar. Once he was happy doing that, we said, okay, now make it for lunch and dinner. Make dinner also low in carbohydrates, refined carbohydrates. And so we just did those changes, and then he realized that he was not hungry that often, so he was eating less, and we saw all the results in 4 months.
So Sanjeev, you mentioned a food diary, and that's something that some of the listeners will be familiar with, but some won't be. I think we all understand the power of writing a food diary or a journal and then becoming absolutely aware of what we're eating. How long does the food diary get completed for? What's the process you go through with your patients?
Okay, I always ask them to write down what they're eating, every single thing they are eating, and the quantity, right? So it's very difficult for people to put pen to paper. So I tell them, look, the longer it is, the better for me. But if you can just do it for a week, just for 1 week, that will be like a snapshot of what you're eating. And this is very important, because many times I've heard patients tell me, I didn't realize I was eating that frequent or that much.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, everybody tends to say, oh, I eat a little bit, I eat a little bit. But what is a little bit? We don't know until they write down and see for themselves what exactly they are eating. I've got some patients who are really motivated. They take pictures of what they're eating, you know.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's really good because, you know, so we know exactly what they're consuming.
Mm. That's really good. I think the idea of taking photos and pictures is a really good thing because it's easy to do, right? You can just take a photo of your meal,
Yes.
and you know, then you don't have to write long, complicated journals. You can just keep a photo diary now. So
That's right.
that's a really good idea. So I guess, you know, we've talked a bit about why the standard Australian and also the standard Asian diets cause metabolic conditions because they're full of refined carbohydrates, starchy carbohydrates, things like soft drinks, highly sweetened, you know, a lot of sweetened food, a lot of processed food, a lot of, industrial seed oils, which are also very bad for us. We've talked a bit about how you're using low carb as a treatment for conditions like diabetes, obesity, but also, you know, things like, as you said, the infection, the insulin resistance. But a lot of people are still fearful of low carb, even though we know it works. We've got the evidence, and I think there's more and more evidence coming out every single day. Whenever I look in the medical journals, whenever I look in the research, I see a new study about its effectiveness against cancer, against diabetes. I see reports around Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, how it improves sleep, how it can reduce sleep apnea. So many different pieces of evidence, and yet people are still very frightened of it. They're still concerned. And as you said right at the beginning, you know, they have this perception that we've had for, you know, many years now, maybe 60 or 70 years, that fat makes you fat. Saturated fat clogs your arteries. It's going to give you heart disease. So how do you counter those fears? You know, what do you tell people who come to you and say, I don't believe it, I'm skeptical, it's going to be bad for me, I'm going to die of a heart attack? What's your counter to that?
Okay. So, Lynn, it's very interesting. You know, I agree with every single word you just said, every one of it, right? It's a fact that the low carb diet has many benefits, and we are getting the results. You know, they're all coming out little by little. But you know, let's just think for a while. There's nothing magical about this diet. Nothing, right? It's just eating healthy, eating food made by nature, which humans were meant to consume. Okay, so and this is something we were all doing until about maybe 120 years ago. And then in our attempt to overcome hunger, we made food available, readily available, but not the right food. Not the right food. So I've got some Australians who live off the farm and they eat everything off the farm. They look so healthy. And they're not overweight. They eat all the eggs from the farm. They cook their food in lard, in drippings. If only everybody could eat like them, seriously, we doctors would be seeing a lot less people, a lot less patients, right? So, so the mindset, this is 40 years. I don't know if I can use this word. It's 40 years of propaganda, right? Fat is bad for you. Fat is bad for you, right? And everybody told me this. When I was trying to find an answer, fat is bad for you, and it is so. So we have to stop and ask ourselves. Wait a minute. If you said fat is bad for us, we've been saying this for 40 years. All over the world, if you look again, the consumption of fat has been coming down, But why is it the number of people with obesity, type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance, it's been rising. It's just rising. You told us don't eat fat, we avoided fat, but the diseases are still there. So it takes a lot of effort on my part to convince my patient that fat is not that bad. I have to make them realize that the human body is made of fat and protein. So then they go, yeah, wait a minute, that's right. And look, we always ask babies to be breastfed. What's in breast milk? Fat and protein, cholesterol, right? So, and we know that so many functions in the body, biochemical functions in the body require fat. And in fact, I was watching a documentary several months ago, and the narrator made a very interesting comment. When a lion or a tiger goes in for the kill, what is the first part they kill? They eat, they consume all the fatty part, right? And then they leave everything else for the scavengers, right? So fat is good. The human brain is made of fat. And then once I let them know that why fat is important for them to have in their diet, then the next step is to tell them what is good fat and what is bad fat.
Right.
Right. And their eyes will always go big when I say, look, animal fat is good. They say, what? I said, yeah, animal fat is good. So, and what is bad fat? So I give them a list. These are all the fats you should avoid. These are all the fats you should eat. And it takes effort. It takes little convincing, because once you have convinced them and they believe you, they will go home for their siblings or their spouse to say otherwise.
That's right.
Right. So they will come back again being skeptical, but it takes a lot of convincing. There are some people who come to me because they've already done their homework. They just wanted to hear a doctor say, oh, it's okay to eat fat.
So Sanjeev, in the medical community, you're one of the lone voices, but you're a very small a minority of doctors who now understand, recommend, and prescribe the low carb way of eating. How well is this now being understood in the medical community? Are you seeing a growing increase interest? Is there other doctors like you coming on board, or are you still fighting the majority?
Okay, so a lot of doctors are still very skeptical about this diet. Okay, and I keep telling them there's nothing magical about the diet. I keep telling them, that's what I always tell them. It's nothing magical. Look at what we're asking you to eat. It's just healthy food. But they are still very skeptical. They follow guidelines. I hate the word guidelines, because Dr. Sarah Holberg, she made a very interesting remark. You know, if you want to help somebody with diabetes, ignore the guidelines. Okay, and it's stuck in my head. That's so right. Because if you follow these guidelines, you are going to keep the person a diabetic.
Yeah.
Yes.
So doctors, doctors have been trained in a certain way. You know, I'm not saying it's good or bad, but it's the training, right? So it's not the singer, it's the song that they are told to sing. So like I, for instance, you know, I thought, okay, if you have diabetes, we're going to treat you with medications. That's it, right? And if you want to go on diet, yeah, good luck. Seriously, I would say to people, good luck. And at one time I said, why bother? You know, because I know you're not going to change your diet, right? But people want answers. I mean, options. People want options. And doctors out there, and you know, they would say, look, yeah, change your diet, but it will be given in a very half-hearted manner. Or the doctors would like to just delegate that responsibility to the dietitian.
Yes.
Now, I've got nothing against the dietitian. Again, it's not the singer, it's the song. So when they give that same advice, you know, following the guidelines, you know, dietary guidelines, this is what you eat. If you have diabetes, you know, it's a dog chasing its tail. We get nowhere.
Yeah.
We get nowhere. So doctors are still, doctors are still following or giving out advice like what they've been told to do, right? And that is why, like, people like me, when I wanted to break out of this behavior, it was difficult. You know, I was afraid that the medical board is going to come after me. I was afraid a doctor is going to report me in, because I get patients coming from other GPs saying, oh, this happened to me. My doctor said, don't eat this, don't eat that, don't eat this. But my friend said, come and see you because, and I'll get better. And I said, oh, okay. Now, if I tell him what his GP said is outdated, is he going to go and tell his GP? Is his GP going to get upset with me?
Yes.
So these are all the things that we face. I face, or doctors like me face. But I've come to the point where, look, if the patient wants answers, the patient wants options, I give it to them. And if doctors come to me and say, hey, Sanjeev, how do you manage your diabetic patients? I show them, right? But there's a lot of resistance from my fellow colleagues and other doctors. I've been shouted down once at a medical meeting, not a conference, a meeting. Someone said, Sanjeev, it's unfair for you to advise an Asian to not eat rice. So someone actually said that to me, and I was, okay, fine, don't argue, you're in a public place. Shh, okay. Yeah,
but
so
you don't expect, right? You don't expect as a doctor that you have to hide your opinions away. I mean, people come to you because they trust you, and you should be able to prescribe whatever's right for them, whether that's diet or whether it's medication. You should have, a certain degree of freedom to do that. And I think I really hope that the tide is changing, because there's little signs out there now that, the Diabetes Association is starting to recognize ketogenic diets, for example. There are some of the health authorities around the world who are starting to, to recognize it. And I think if we can get a few more of these, as you said, if we can get some more of those guidelines changed, and we can get some more doctors, to change their opinion and to look at the new guidelines, then we can actually really make a difference. But it requires people like you who are, to be honest, brave enough to stand up and be prepared to be shouted down. It takes somebody like you to do this, to make that change in the community.
Yes. So because it's very important as doctors, as clinicians, we give patients options, choices. It's very important because right now they think, look, if I'm unwell, I need a pill, right? A lot of people have that idea, I need a pill. And I won't say it's wrong. It's about meeting the patient's expectations. But you have to give patient options, choices, so they can make an informed decision, right? So like if I have a patient, and I've got a handful of patients who have told me, Sanjeev, nah, this is too cumbersome. Just give me my tablets. I've got no time to cook. I've got no time to change my diet. Just give me my medication. I said, fine. If you change your mind, you know what you have to do, right? So I don't force people to go on the diet. I don't force people to take medications. I give them options. As long as they're making a safe decision, which is not going to endanger them, then I help them make those decisions. But I never force them to do something they don't want.
I think that's, again, it's really important, because when you look around, and I do look at a lot of what the medical practice does, where perhaps they put somebody onto a pill because, as you said, people want a magic pill, they want a quick fix, but that pill might have a whole number of side effects or contraindications, or maybe there are long-term implications that we do or we don't know. And I think that, people often don't question or challenge, well, what else is going to happen if I take that long term? How am I going to feel? What's my outcomes going to be? And as you said, if there's an option where the diet can be, changed slightly, like you mentioned with the 15, 16-year-old boy, just some small changes can have a radical, outcome for their life, for their, everything, their lifestyle, the way that they live their daily life. Then that's really important. They understand there's simple diet changes, or there's some very serious side effects of the drugs that you might face. And I don't think everybody gets that full spectrum of information, advice, and options. So I think that's so important.
Yes, I completely agree with you. And yes, so because they don't have that information, what else does this medicine do to me? right? What else does it do to me? And there are no side effects from changing your diet.
Right.
Right? There's no side effects from changing your diet. All medications have some form of side effect, because that one medicine you take, whatever that medicine is, it's not only going to serve that one function. It's going to do so many things to you, so many other things. We don't have a medication where it's only going to do that one function, or bring on that one change that it's been designed to. No, it's going to affect your whole body in many ways.
Right.
Some in positive ways, some in negative ways, right? But you will not see that when you change your diet or you eat healthy. Yeah, you're right.
Exactly right.
So Sanjeev, you're a great example of a lot of our listeners who are busy professionals. You're a GP. You have lots of obligations. You have family, kids. So give us a day in the life of Dr. Sanjeev, insofar as a lot of our listeners are on their wellness curves. They're thinking about sleep. They're thinking about movement. They're thinking about what they're eating. What do you do in your day to manage your own wellness and make sure you stay grounded and stay healthy for your patients?
Right. So yeah, thanks, Michael. That is a very, I like questions like that. You say, I love life. Okay, I love life. I want to live as long as possible, and just enjoy life. Right. So I want to stay healthy. I don't want to fall sick. And this is what I tell my patients. Now I've got patients who are like 60, 70 years old, and I tell them, look, today we assume everybody's going to live to 100. We want good quality lives. So I want your next 30 years to be of good quality. I want your next 40 years to be of good quality, and it starts now. So what do you need to do? And this is what I do, right? So a lot of people know they have to exercise. Yes, exercising is good, but it's important to differentiate between exercising to stay fit and exercising to lose weight. And this is just my personal belief. Even an unhealthy person can be fit. So you have to remember, if you exercise, it doesn't mean you're healthy. So a lot of people have to understand that exercising, while it's good, doesn't necessarily mean you're healthy. So I'll elaborate on this in a little while. So my principles are, yes, I have to exercise. I'm very busy, as you know. I can only exercise like three times a week. And so I want to maximize that effort, right? So that's why I use the high intensity interval training, right? So I can get the most out of just 20 minutes or 30 minutes, right? And if you look at the research, and I'm sure Michael, Lynn, both of you are aware, that doing HIIT training just for 20 minutes is as good as like training for 90 minutes, right? You get the same outcomes. So it's all about the type of exercises. So if when I get time to exercise those 20 minutes, it's always high interval intensity training. And sleep, as you rightly mentioned, sleep is very important for me. I make sure I get 7 to 8 hours of sleep every day. That's very important. These are all things we have neglected, right? We want to get the most out of our 24 hours, and we think, I'll sleep later, I'll sleep over the weekend. No, every time we sleep late, or we sleep less, it affects our body from head to toe, right? So we've talked about exercise, sleep. Of course, we talked about eating healthy. And of course, other things like, we don't smoke, we don't drink alcohol in excess, and mindfulness, right? We have to learn how to relax. And I find a good way for that is to exercise, right? Because when you're exercising, you're out there in the open, you're in the park, it's open air, it helps you to relax. So I thought I'd tell you this before. A normal day for me would be getting up at 7 o'clock and skipping breakfast, getting ready for work. I work till there are days I work till 5, there are days I work till 7. So on days I work till 5, those are the days that I am going to exercise. And there'll be, so if I don't feel hungry, I will skip my lunch. But dinner is very important. Dinner is very important for me. That's where I'll have my steak, my large piece of steak. and sometimes it's steak, sometimes it's lamb, pork, or chicken, fish, salmon, and a small bowl of salad, which will be drenched with a lot of olive oil, parmesan, or feta cheese, and things like that. And that's going to be my dinner every night. And that's quite similar to what my kids eat. They don't go bored. They're never bored eating meat. They love meat. They eat meat every night. And of course, meat with the fat around it, of course. And weekends. Now, weekends is when I just relax, do my readings, catch up with the family, and stuff like that. So, and the other thing I want to just say before we end this is that this eating this way, living this way, is not about taking the fun out of life, right? So on a really hot day, it's 12 o'clock in the afternoon, Saturday. Yes, I want that beer, right? Okay, so I have a mug of beer, but I know one mug of beer, that amount of carbs, fine. Because why? I've not had a beer for like 2 months, so it's okay. I can do this, right? So it's part about making wise, healthy choices, right? So but there are it's a celebration, it's a party, it's an anniversary, it's a birthday. Yes, go out, have that cheesecake, have that extra cupcake, whatever. You're on a holiday, yes, but on most days, eat healthy, stay healthy, and just make healthy choices.
I think, Sanjeev, that you left the best to last there. I think that advice that live a healthy life, do all the right things, make the best choices you can every day. But it's not about taking the fun away. I mean, the food that you've talked about there, a beautiful big steak with some salad and olive oil is a delicious meal. It's incredibly tasty. It's as nature intended. Doing some exercise, getting out in nature. They're not unpleasant things to do. They're all really enjoyable things to do, but then making sure that you don't restrict yourself to the point where you feel that you're not having fun anymore. And I think that's super important for everybody to understand, that you can still have fun and be very, very healthy at the same time. And having fun is part of being healthy, because it is the way that you metaphorically let your hair down. It's the way that you relax, and the social aspect can be super important for people as well. So make sure you're having fun and enjoying life, and enjoying every single day along the way of your life.
Yes. Lynn, can I just add one more thing, which is, I think, equally important, which I always tell my patients, and I think your listeners should know. Whenever I tell my patients to avoid rice, they will say, what about brown rice? I say, hey, avoid potato. What about sweet potato? Avoid bread. What about whole grain bread? So I always tell them, yes, they are slightly better for you, but I tell them this: it's like a knife, all right? You've got a blunt knife and you've got a sharp knife. The knife will still cut you, right? So if the white rice is your sharp knife, your brown rice is the blunt knife. It's not going to hurt you really now, but it's eventually going to cut you.
Right.
So, and it's always marketing. We have to be smarter than the marketing coming from the other side.
Yeah, absolutely right. And you touched on something there, Sanjeev, the marketing, because the big food companies spend billions of dollars on marketing. And there's so much money to be made in food, especially supplements as well, but food especially. They're making so much money. They're pouring money into marketing, and there isn't so much money to be made in natural whole foods, the meat, the vegetables from the earth. There isn't the same amount of money, so they don't get the marketing budgets. And so what we see is a very biased view in the media all the time. Yes. So I think that's great advice. Again, really challenge the popular opinion, challenge, what you've been told, and think about how we were meant to live. And I think you said it a few minutes ago, say 200 years ago, before the Industrial Revolution, we didn't have refined sugar. We didn't have, grains that had been processed in big mills. We didn't have hydrogenated oils that were produced in chemical reactions. What we had was we had animals to eat, and we had plants and fruit that were in season and probably in quite limited supply.
Yes.
And so we ate what was fresh and what was in season, and we didn't keep food for 1 or 2 years in our cupboard in plastic bags. So really think about what people had access to 200 years ago, because that's typical of what we've eaten for our whole history, which is a lot longer than the last few years, where we've had these crazy frankenfoods and processed foods put on our tables.
Yes,
Absolutely.
because that is how we as humans have evolved. That's how we evolved, eating those type of foods, but not the foods in the last 150 years or so. No, the human body has just been introduced to these new kinds of food.
Yeah. And I think, the human body is amazingly adaptable and flexible, and we do evolve. I think that's an important point. We do evolve, but we don't evolve over 150 years.
No, we don't.
We evolve over tens and hundreds of thousands of years, right? So we're all of a sudden trying to force our bodies to change, and our bodies can't. They can't handle this quantity of toxic material and chemicals that we're exposed to every day in our environment and in our food. And we could probably do a whole episode on this, actually.
So yes, on that note, we are going to be inviting you back again. But Sanjeev, you are an absolute inspiration. It's been an absolute pleasure and an honour to have you on the Peaks Life with Lynn and myself today. So first of all, thank you for your time. Thank you for your expertise and your passion to bring the low-carb lifestyle to your patients and the greater community. It's been fascinating to understand both your professional point of view, but also your personal journey and your personal story. So thank you for your time, and we would love to have you back again to see how your journey continues on a later edition.
Yeah, thanks again, Sanjeev.
Yeah, Michael, thank you so much for having me, Lynn, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to share my experiences with you and your listeners. I'll be glad to come back again and do this one more time. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Thanks, Sanjeev.
Thank you, Sanjeev.
See you next time.
See ya. Bye.